You might be wondering, how on earth would an emergency fund be a weakness, especially if you don't have one right now? So let me explain. I've seen this with some of my previous clients. I have experienced this myself in the past, and I'm starting to see it now. People feeling nervous or even guilty for using money from their emergency funds. The emergency fund itself is just a pot of money. It's neutral. How we relate to it and how we think about using that money is what makes it either a strength or a weakness. Let's put this into context and look at some potential reasons why we might be reluctant to use money from our emergency funds and what we can do about it. Hello and welcome to the Savvy Corner, where we talk about personal and business finances, financial well-being and money mindset. If you're new here, my name is Alisa and I'm a financial coach and consultant based in the UK. If you're not new, hi and thanks for stopping by again. In my previous video, I talked you through a SWOT analysis of this whole situation, which I will nickname Rona. So we looked at how Rona can affect you and your finances, and your business if you have one, and what to do about it. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it for you on the screen and in the description box below. One of the things I mentioned in that video as being a strength is having an emergency fund. I did not go into details on the technicalities of how the SWOT model works, but one of the dangers to be aware of is the ability of the items in your analysis to change quadrants. So for example, opportunities becoming threats or strengths becoming weaknesses, moving from one box to the other. It is this latter situation, strengths becoming weaknesses, that I want to address in this video, specifically talking about emergency funds. You might be wondering, how on earth would an emergency fund be a weakness, especially if you don't have one right now? So let me explain. I've seen this with some of my previous clients. I have experienced this myself in the past, and I'm starting to see it now. People feeling nervous or even guilty for using money from their emergency funds. The emergency fund itself is just a pot of money. It's neutral. How we relate to it and how we think about using that money is what makes it either a strength or a weakness. Let's put this into context and look at some potential reasons why we might be reluctant to use money from our emergency funds and what we can do about it. One reason might be that your emergency fund and your savings are actually the same pot of money. A lot of people budget like this. They have one savings account in which they keep both money for emergencies and money for things they'd like to buy in the future, i.e. savings. So the moment you start using money from that account for an emergency, it's like you're waving goodbye to your savings. People ask me why I differentiate between emergency money and savings when I budget, and this is why. By separating them out, you know exactly how much money you've allocated for emergencies and how much is saved for a specific purchase. That is not to say that if you run out of emergency money, you can't dip into your savings. You absolutely can. But keeping them separate makes budgeting a lot easier and takes away some of that anxiety of using your savings to pay for an emergency. Another reason why you wouldn't want to spend money from your emergency fund is the fact that doing so would mean that you are admitting to being in an emergency situation. Let's take Rona, for example. You might have treated it as something to be aware of, perhaps concerned about, but the moment you start using emergency money to financially cope with it, you have to admit that this is not only serious, but it is dangerous, potentially life-threatening, that it could put you out of business, etc. So if you are reluctant to spend emergency money and you can't really find an explanation for that, it might well be that you are fighting an internal battle with regards to which stage you are in on the change curve. I will share an image on the screen with all of the different stages of change. Please feel free to pause this video and have a look at this. Let's look at another scenario. If you have a business, you might have put together an emergency fund and told yourself that in case your business or your idea doesn't work, you will use this money to keep you going until you decide what to do next. Well, using that money now is admitting that whatever you had in mind when you set up the emergency fund didn't work. Your business didn't work, your idea didn't work. I'm not saying this is true, but your brain is making an association between this situation and failure because of the way in which you have conceived this emergency fund. I want to propose another way of looking at this. Instead of associating using that money with some sort of failure, how about reframing it like this? Your emergency fund is not being used because your business didn't work, but to allow you more time to make it work. Whether that means that you need to pivot or change a few things to do that, it doesn't matter. Your emergency fund is a way of keeping your business afloat until the crisis passes. Give yourself permission to use that money as a safety blanket that allows you to continue to work on your business rather than thinking about it as an indication of your business not going so well. If you can remove or minimize your financially induced stress for a period of a few months or however long your emergency fund will last, do it. You will be more focused and able to come up with ideas of how to get back to a comfortable financial position if you're not constantly worrying about money. Talking about getting back to a comfortable financial position, another reason why people are nervous to use money from their emergency fund is fear of not being able to ever replenish it, or that it will take an extremely long period of time to do so. It's difficult to imagine abundance and prosperity when you are in an emergency situation and you're also financially struggling. But refusing to spend money because you think you're not going to be able to put that fund back together is like saying, this will never get better. I will never get out of this situation that I find myself in, and therefore I must preserve this money at all costs because I'll never see it again. This is a thought that is poisonous, and it will keep you in a spiral of negativity. Because guess what? Whether you think you'll be able to replenish this emergency fund or not, you are right either way. Emergencies come and they go. We have never experienced and we will never experience a state of perpetual emergency. There are crises that last a few years, and although that can seem like an eternity, eventually they pass. Things do get better, and for some people they get better sooner. Not because they're lucky, but because they are determined to get there sooner. Your ability to replenish an emergency fund does not rely on some external circumstance that you have no control over. It's up to you how soon you get that money back together. So take ownership of that and don't let fear dictate your decisions. You are capable of making your own. Okay, let's look at another reason why people might not want to use money from their emergency fund, and that is the thought that using that money makes you lazy or complacent, or that you'll be less proactive to improve your financial situation if you rely on your emergency fund. And I specifically mean Rona right now. I think now is a good time to remind ourselves what an emergency is. An emergency is a serious, unexpected, and often dangerous situation that requires immediate action. Using money that you have specifically set aside for this purpose doesn't make you lazy or complacent. It means you are acting according to plan and using the tools at your disposal to respond to an emergency in a timely manner. As long as you keep using that money for what is a true emergency and you don't start buying gifts or other discretionary items, for example, give yourself a break. If you were proactive enough to build an emergency fund in the first place, you will be proactive enough to improve your financial situation when the emergency is over. Finally, you might be reluctant or even feel guilty about using money from your emergency fund in a situation where you share this fund with your partner and they don't need the money. Let me give you an example. Let's say that your job or your business have been affected by the emergency and therefore you need extra money to pay for necessary expenditure. But your partner has not been so affected financially and therefore they can manage without the extra money. It can feel selfish using money from this fund that you both contributed to for your own benefit. But think carefully about this. Is it really for your own benefit only? Your financial well-being and your mental well-being take precedence over 50-50 splits and fairness, right? And that is a priority both for you and your partner. I mean, this was something that you both acknowledged when you decided to put your finances together. It might have never been verbalized, but usually that's how it works. Otherwise, you would have kept your finances separate. Your guilt and fears could be removed by having a conversation with your partner about this. You might be overthinking it or letting your emotions take over. So talk to them about this and come to a conclusion. The conclusion can either be, it's fine, you can use the money, this is our money, or it can be, you can use the money, but then you'll have to replenish the fund all by yourself. Whatever it is, if you are now in need of money for an emergency, it's worth having this conversation, get those feelings off your chest, and start putting that money to good use. Our emergency funds are there as a cushion, as a financial safety blanket, and they are supposed to give us peace of mind in case something happens. As long as you see them for what they are and use them accordingly, they are a great strength. When you start worrying about using your emergency fund, it stops being a strength and it becomes a weakness, something that causes you even more stress and anxiety. It's up to you to keep it as a strength, so give yourself permission to make use of it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I've got more similar content coming your way, so consider subscribing and hit the bell if you don't want to miss any future videos. Until then, I will leave you with the two that are suggested on the screen right now. Thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!